30-second warning, and then I'll tell you stop.
All right, thank you. And you can complete your sentence, but then you really do have to stop. We know time limits are frustrating, but I'll just tell you why we have them. First, we're very diligent about treating all candidates equally. And second, if we don't have time limits, we don't treat the audience fairly because we want to get to as many audience questions as we have, as we can. And we know this isn't a perfect way to do it, but we hope it strikes the right balance. We randomly drew candidate names out of a hat, and that determined the speaking order for opening statements. And after that, the candidates answer your questions. Now, quite a few questions were already sent in to us. We will also take written questions during the forum. What you do is you email them to, and it's ashlandforum@abcleaguevoters.org. That's ashlandforum@abcleaguevoters.org. Our question sorter is Allison Lutterman, and she screens them for defamatory content, which we don't allow, and for duplication. So we'll get to as many questions as we can, but we almost always run out of time before we run out of questions, and we get so many thoughtful questions. So apologies if yours isn't asked. So I read the question, and you can ask to have it repeated. We'll take turns on who goes first, unless the question is to a specific candidate, and then you answer, and the other candidate may or may not choose to respond. So I will also mention that after both candidates have responded, each candidate can have 1 additional minute for rebuttal and also an additional minute for a counter rebuttal. But you'll see as we go along that very rarely is that needed, but I do ask both of you to signal me if you would like to offer a rebuttal or a counter rebuttal. So after the questions and answers, we'll have the 1-minute closing statements, and we plan to finish up about 7:30. So now let's hear from our candidates, and we're going to start with the opening statement, 2 minutes, from Anthony Boudreau.
First off, thank you for hosting this event, giving us the opportunity to speak, and thank you, Mr. Zupke, for participating with me. So anyways, starting out, so I'm born and raised in Ashland, got into law enforcement. I've been working locally in the area for about a little over 20 years. During my career, I've done numerous I went down numerous different avenues during my career. I'm a high growth person. I love challenges, opportunities, love learning new things and figuring things out. That's kind of why I've got so many different trainings in specialty areas that I've done throughout my career. There are some particular ones that I really favor over others. I miss my days of doing DARE instruction, going into schools, educational pieces. As for my current role as an investigator, love it. But I do miss the challenges that I got to work with when I was a mid-management supervisor. I do fleet management, which has, you're dealing with the budget and planning for the future. Balancing equipment needs versus wants.
30 seconds.
There's a lot that goes into that that I really enjoy. So I'm looking for the opportunity. Just like my motto says, I want to work for you for a better tomorrow. I'm done.
All right, thank you. Brian Zupke.
Hi, my name is Brian Zupke again. I have 24 years experience in law enforcement. I started in Ashland County in 2001, Bad River Police Department. I worked my way up with specialized training. That's what I think was my best goal at the time, was to move up in law enforcement, not just patrol. I wanted to learn every aspect of the job. I eventually had went to sergeant investigator. At the time, I was a field training officer for 10 years. Well, I continued for 10 years doing that, in advanced level as well. During that time, I went to management school in Oklahoma that the tribe had sent me to. It was a leadership management role. It was a week long down there. During that time, I learned I had a passion for enforcing narcotics. That was my primary investigations. Those dual duties, doing patrol and doing that, field training. Eventually, after 6 years, I was hired on to Ashland County and continued most of those roles, dual duties. At the time, we only had one detective. So to do it's kind of the patrol, someone that was ambitious, wanted to do drugs as well, and proving themselves, that's what I did. Eventually, I moved myself up to detective, then to detective sergeant. Before that, I got all my special aid trainings in death investigation school, advanced interview interrogation,
30
sexual
seconds.
assault, domestic training. Throughout that, I was eventually promoted chief deputy in the last year and a half and learned budget policy, hiring, all that process, and has made me well-rounded within the department of understanding every aspect of the job. That's all.
All right. All right, thank you very much. Okay, now to the questions and answers. First question, several months ago, the Ashland City Police Department participated in an open discussion with Bad River tribal members and other community participants. Policing issues and perceptions, including minority policing issues, and were productively discussed. The Ashland County Sheriff's Department was not a part of that discussion. Would you support a similar discussion that involved county law enforcement? And if so, who should be involved? What approach would you bring to the table? And what issues would you like to see addressed? And we'll give it 90 seconds. And starting with Brian Zupke.
Okay, first of all, I want to start off with, I don't think we were invited to that session. We would have been more than glad to attend it if invited. Yeah, there's many issues that we addressed. It was reestablishing that relationship. I'm a tribal member myself through Bad River, doing, it involves being committed to interacting with the community at all levels, attending events, powwows, interacting with the children at, Girls and Boys Club. But we started off with doing a culture diversity training with Ashland PD, which we invited the Daily Press at the time, and, just to kind of establish that, get away from that implicit biases and where they're more non-biased. I mean, every officer has good intentions, but they're just maybe not aware of the culture. And like you said, over just 11% or more of our Ashland County population is Native American. And that needs to be
30
recognized,
seconds.
especially when our jail is, at least 50% or more some of the time of inmates are Native American, and the relationship needs to be restored at all levels.
Anthony Boudreau, 90 seconds.
I'm obviously, I don't work for Ashland County, so I wasn't invited to that. I flew over here when I first started my career with the county. I worked up in when we had some problems with staffing at the police department. Me being the North Deputy, I worked Red Cliff area, and I had to, kind of learn how things work on my own. A lot of great folks up there that kind of helped me through and made me aware of some of the cultural perceptions that the culture may have of towards law enforcement and the way we treat folks that within their community, which just opening up them lines of communication really helped a lot. So I would see is with any community, not just tribal relations, you can go throughout the whole county.
30 seconds.
There's different communities have different needs, wants, and it's very important as the sheriff to go through and make sure he's accommodating and understanding each of the different communities, needs, wants, and what their perceptions are, and open up that dialogue within all the communities. So we're aware of how we're doing in that feedback.
All right, thank you.
I just want to add, I don't know if it's on my end. I'm having a difficult time hearing Mr. Boudreau. I can hear everybody else just fine, but I can hardly hear anything.
Roger, do you have any suggestions for
How about now?
improving the audio?
Am I good now?
A
Kind of same.
little bit more, please. Say just testing 1, 2, 3, if you could.
Testing 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3.
Oh, it's getting a little better. Keep going.
Testing 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3.
Much better.
Okay.
Give me a second here. My monitor shut off on me.
Oh,
If you can turn your volume up a little bit on your machine, that would help, I think.
Yeah, I can't get to that menu because it's on a different monitor. That when I moved it, it shut down.
Okay, well,
Give me a second here and we'll.
okay.
All right, I'll just make sure I talk nice and loud. Can you hear me clear?
It's better for me. How about you?
it's a little better.
Okay,
It's a little bit kind of muffled yet.
okay. Well, okay. Next question. What is your position on the mandatory use of body cameras for all deputies and jail personnel, starting with Anthony Boudreau, 1 minute?
So technology use, specifically the cameras, I support the use of cameras 100%. I know from early when I started my career, we didn't have access to the recording devices in the cars. When I came over to Bayfield County, when I came to Bayfield County in 2007, we had the cameras in car there. I love them. You can't argue facts when you have it right on video. They are costly to have, but they're currently coming out. I believe the Badger State Sheriff's is working towards getting some grant funding secured for that's coming out for purchasing of these body worn devices, which I think are great.
Stop.
All right, thank you. Brian Zupke?
Yeah, I'm 100% for body cameras. I mean, I don't think any officer or deputy has anything to hide. Would love to have video footage to show the accuracy of what's taking place and what we're doing on an everyday basis. As Mr. Boudreau pointed out, it's funding is the #1 issue in these small rural areas, especially Ashland County. We don't have a lot of money, and the biggest problem for having cameras, you got to have camera storage drives to put them on. And I know we have 24 deputies, and put all that, including if we had jail staff had these, you would it would take probably $100,000 or more, and we'd have to depend on grants, because I don't think right now our county could afford it.
All right. Next question. What is your plan for recruiting and retaining deputies and jail personnel? Starting 1 minute, Brian Zupke.
Okay, recruiting, I mean, as far as deputies, we really haven't had any problems with that. We opened it up to lateral transfer to get experienced officers. At first, we used to be a training ground with young officers coming from different areas and leaving. Now we're doing lateral transfer. People with experience that come here can have vacation. It gives them a incentive to want to stay. On a jail standpoint, we do have a little more difficulty. I think their wages need to come up and be competitive with the rest of the state.
30
They
seconds.
are busier than we are on a daily basis, doing, they're at full capacity most of the time, pre-COVID. So I think at this point, we need to raise the wages and recognize the hard work a lot of them are doing, as well as the dispatchers. Everybody within law enforcement right now is in our northern Wisconsin's a little underpaid compared to the rest of the country in our state.
Anthony Anthony Boudreau.
So the recruitment is, getting out there, sending your leadership down and actually visiting the tech schools with the graduating classes. Some of these folks going through these classes are paying for it on their own. And if you get to them while they're in them recruit academies, you might find some shining stars out there. We recently did that. We started the going to the tech schools here in Bayfield County. And we ended up hiring one of the new recruits out of one of the classes. He told our chief deputy that he wanted to work for Bayfield County and only Bayfield County, just based on the fact that we went looking for recruits, and he thought that was awesome. Ashland County is doing a great job of
Time's up.
Okay, next question. Thank you. Do you think the current policy and procedures for department response to an active shooter incident are adequate? Please explain your answer. Starting with Anthony Boudreau, 1 minute.
I believe Ashland County is very similar to us. They have a Lexapro program that kind of goes with the state standard. As far as active shooter protocols, it's first responder there goes in and deals with that active threat. I know why this kind of comes up right now currently is because of the situation that's in the news where it shows a bunch of officers standing at the end.
30 seconds.
So here in the state of Wisconsin, they were proactive. I believe it was about 10 years ago that they went through and were getting street level officers trained for the active shooter. Locally, there's instructors that are.
All right. Thank you. Brian Zupke.
Yeah, I think we're up to speed on the policies and procedures that we're supposed to be for active shooter. We have been trained, but one thing where I would like to see is we don't have enough training. I mean, you can do it once a year. I think it should be quarterly when you're involving schools. A lot of times you need repetitive behavior to get this muscle memory movement going on the law enforcement level, from a teacher level, even at a courthouse level. We need to always integrate this training with them, so it's not forgotten. We need to train more for this in our schools, like I said, and other any events like this. We need to get everybody on the same page, even local other adjacent counties trained together, because they'll help us respond when they respond. So we're all on the same page.
All right, thank you. The next question is actually, I'm going to read 3 questions that all sort of relate to the same issue, although you can sort of break it apart into 2, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I'm going to read the 3 questions first because the answers are probably interrelated. And I'll give you 3 minutes on this one, Gary, because it can get a little bit complicated. So the question, I'll just read them in order. What are the rules of engagement for water protectors protesting on end bridge right of ways? Will they be arrested and charged with felony trespass? A similar question is, where do you stand in regard to response to crowd control with peaceful protests? For example, rules of engagement, roll of dogs, tear gas, etc. Another question, in the case of peaceful protests on utility projects, what is your policy on enforcement of the current Wisconsin trespass law? So all of those questions came in. I would probably break it out into what your rules of engagement are for crowd control, and also the other question on enforcement of trespass law. So I'm happy to repeat those if you'd like, but starting with Brian Zupke, I'll give you up to 3 minutes on this if you think you need it.
Okay.
Okay.
In our rules of engagement, I mean, the key word is peaceful protest. I mean, there is nothing against that, they're abiding the laws and whatnot. We don't have canines that we use to attack people. We've sent guys, our deputies to training how to handle anything that was escalated to a higher level than that. But we have no reason to, like I said, I mean, I guess our issues in our area of the pipeline. We understand the meanings behind it and everything else. We don't, right now, we don't actively use tear gas. At some point, you know, can we use it in different matters? Yes, probably. But as far as trespassing goes, I mean, that goes along the lines with any incident we'd call for. I mean, if there's a violation of trespassing, we treat it like anything else with a, you know, ordinance citation at some levels, and hopefully it would be peaceful. But what was the second part of the question again?
Well, basically it dealt with what are the rules of engagement, and also what's your policy on enforcing the trespass laws. Will they be arrested and charged under the trespass laws? So it was basically those two parts.
Okay, very.
Came out of it.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I think we would, any trespassing would be treated like any other matter. And if it's peaceful, that would result in an ordinance citation like any other matter. So if they, hopefully these wouldn't turn violent in any way, but like I said, we're not training to release dogs on the crowd or tear gas. I mean, usually we have methods of training with, you know, make sure that, you know, all people are safe in this any kind of protest. That's all I have to say.
All right, Anthony Boudreau.
So as far as rules of engagement, like Brian had pointed out, keyword being peaceful. If something's peaceful, I could not see the deploying of OC gas or you know, dispersal products on a group that's peaceful. I know there can be, you know, there can be things that may cause it to take further action than just enforcement, but that's on the enforcement side. As far as charges, that's up to the prosecutors whether they pursue charges or not. But we are law enforcement and we enforce the laws. So if we write tickets to anyone else for trespassing, then that's what's going to happen there. But yeah, as far as the use of force, I don't see that. Is anyone else getting that feedback?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, and as far as the trespass, I don't believe there's any when you're out in the public or trespassing on another's land, as long as you're not going into dwellings, I don't believe there's any rise to the felony level, but I have not looked into this yet for the easements that are involved with utilities. So that's something for me to look at.
Okay.
Yeah, that,
All right. Thank you. Next question. What is your position on accepting money, for example, as an example from Enbridge under the guise of a donation or a grant versus protection of citizens' right to free speech? That was the way the question was worded. And starting 1 minute with Anthony Boudreau.
that seems like a two-parter. So personally, in my ethics, I don't accept money. I even for like my campaign, I've done it for 20-some years, I have not accepted money for the things I do, and I'm not going to start now. As far as the sheriff, no, that's accepting money. I don't like that. Me personally, I mean, if Enbridge wants to donate to the county and the county accepts it, that's fine, but I would not be in favor of accepting money. It seems like you're taking a side on a issue, and that's not what the sheriff's office is about.
Brian Zupke.
Well, to clear up, first of all, I mean, donations are perfectly legal for a campaign, but I think the question was more related to, you know, they give you the papers for filling that out as far as if you're claim exempt or accept over $2,000. Make that clear again. But the question was really about Enbridge and what we're gonna, well, if we accept money. Given our certain situation in Ashland County, I think we were offered that option to do the grant through Enbridge, and we chose not to, given what's going on, and we have a relationship with Bad River. They contract or they contract 4 deputies, and we don't want to ruin that relationship, and we chose not to. So that's all.
All right, thank you. Next question. I'm just reading exactly the way it came in. Which candidate will get rid of recreational officers so we can deer hunt in Mellon without getting harassed? And starting with Brian Zupke, 1 minute.
What was the first part of that question? I'm sorry.
It says, which candidate will get rid of recreational officers so we can deer hunt in Mellon without getting harassed? That's all I know. I'm just reading the question.
Okay. Well, I think it's important that we have recreational officers. I guess that certain question, I'd like to hear it more in detailed. It seems kind of open-ended. Our recreation officers are very important. Maybe there's more of a personal complaint there, I think, that's underlying that we could handle privately. But I mean, our county recreation in northwestern Wisconsin is very, you know, it's
30
for
seconds.
businesses and whatnot, and we can actually use another recreational officer for boating patrol and what else, what other. But as far as a hunting issue, like I said, I think I'd like to hear more part of the complaint on that, and if it can be handled in a better way than saying get rid of a recreational deputy.
All right. Anthony Boudreau.
Yeah, I don't foresee myself seeking to get rid of a deputy, especially a state that's a position that's funded by the state. In the DNR, we have a similar person over here does the recreational enforcement stuff. I don't see how, if someone's not doing something that's legal, why they would have a problem with the recreational officer. So,
30 seconds.
so, yeah, like Brian said, I would have to know more on that question, but just as it was stated there, I would not be seeking to get rid of any recreational deputies.
All right. All right, thank you. The next question has to do, it's got a long intro, which I will read, but has to do with drug issues. The questioner says, there exists as common knowledge among Ashland County residents that the Sheriff's Department has had a practice of working with informants versus prosecution regarding the drug distribution in our county. Given the increasing number of overdoses and drug-related deaths, how do each of you stand on the balance between this approach and the role of peace officers in protecting the health and safety of county residents? And I'll say, I interpreted this question, and maybe you all have a better understanding, just saying that there's a practice of working with drug offenders, I'll just say, to have them be informants instead of prosecuting them. I think that's what the question is. regarding drug distribution. But anyhow, so that question is, if presuming that's the question, or maybe you understood the other part better. So, okay. So do I need to repeat the actual real question for you after I've muddied the waters a bit, or do you think you guys are ready to go? Starting with Anthony Boudreau, 1 minute. Oh, I'll give you 90 seconds on this.
So the use of informants is kind of commonplace for those who work drug investigations. And the use of a CI is a lot further than an officer just doing a basic investigation. Brian could probably elaborate more. He's more familiar with that. Got very limited experience in drug work. However, it's using of the CIs, you're going after a bigger target, someone who's actually selling and providing that to people in our community. And I think that's where we want to stop. And stop the people that are providing these drugs to the citizens. Now, I guess I don't know how by using them a CI, how that would allow them to continue being a problem.
30 seconds.
I don't have the problem or any problems with use of CIs, but I do think there is enforcement that needs to be done with those who are, using or in possession of drugs. So that's all I have on that.
All right, thank you. Brian Zupke.
Okay, obviously, like I said, I was a narcotics officer for most of my career. So basically, it's always a touchy subject, and it's very few officers get involved with it because it's difficult. We don't have the option to be undercover like big cities because it's small town residents that everybody knows everybody. So sometimes to get the bigger fish, we use confidential informants. Our major drug problem of methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl is coming from other countries, Mexico, China, and wherever else, through the black market, through mail. And basically, you learn as a narcotics officer of being, there's a fine line of using, somebody that maybe needs help. They do need the prosecution, the system to get the rehabilitation. But there's also the person that is a little more responsible. We rely on
30 seconds.
that aren't as vulnerable. Those people that actually want that leniency, and they're in the same time they're helping us. It would be irresponsible for me to use somebody else unstable at any time that could jeopardize themselves, anybody else, or their family. And I would never use somebody in that condition. I'd rather send them through the system to get help, because it'd be irresponsible. So, but if that makes any sense, how the system. Okay.
All right, thank you. And the next question relates somewhat to this. I'll read you the preface the person asked with their question. It says, medications like buprenorphine, I might not say all these properly, aka Suboxone, Subutex, Sublocade, and Methadone are treatments for opioid use disorder that actually reduce rates of overdose death as compared to other treatment options or no treatment. Then it says, jail administration has put significant barriers in place to access into place to access these medications and other medications for substance and behavioral disorders. What do you think about the current policies, and do you have any plans to change what the questioner calls outdated and harmful policies of not having barriers to access these? So starting with Brian Zupke.
Okay, I guess I understand that there's, yeah, I'm well aware of the issues at hand that these programs want to be implemented. Basically, I think if administered appropriately, by a physician that's going to give the right dosage, and there's a proper weaning of a person towards sobriety, I think it'd be a great thing.
30
Basically,
seconds.
it'd be no different than somebody that needs to have antidepressants or whatnot. It helps them get through that phase in their life, and I think the same thing with addiction. It could be a program that, if utilized right, can work.
All right, and Anthony Boudreau?
Yeah, I don't work for Ashland County, so I'm unfamiliar with what,
Could you speak a little closer to your microphone?
do not work for
Okay.
Ashland County, so I'm unfamiliar with what their procedures are over in their facility, what their policies are. I was reviewing a
30 seconds.
video with a law enforcement meeting yesterday with the county board, and they were talking about a MAT program, which it sounds like they're getting medications to help with the withdrawals and psychiatric help for the inmates, for their implementing these programs already. So I'm done.
All right. Related question, what is your assessment of the jail's capacity to provide for the healthcare needs of inmates? Do you have any plans for improvement? Starting with Anthony Boudreau.
Yes, so it's pre-sentence. When we bring people into the facility and they first sober up, a lot of the folks that come in there, there's statistics that say that 60% of the people that are in facilities are because of, well, that come in are have drug abuse, drug or alcohol abuse problems. 40% have mental illnesses. So I would
30 seconds.
see that would be a good time to get them plugged in with community support programs and professionals that could help them get in the right direction for when they're released, or as they get into potential programming through the court system.
Brian Zupke.
I'd like to start off with that. We have a registered nurse on duty that administers to all the inmates. But a lot of time we were at full capacity, and maybe I know I've spoken to Chairman Wiggins and through other people about over half our jails Native American, and maybe we could administer better healthcare within the jail. I'd be totally open to this if Bad River can meet halfway as well, because as far as staff,
30
we
seconds.
need to be able to transport, or they can have a nurse or a doctor come to our facility. And I think it could be feasibly done, and I know it could be done. It's a matter of sitting down and working it out, and we'd be open to adding that would be additional help.
All right. Right. This question also relates somewhat to medical, but it's on the front end of things, I think, when there's a first encounter. It said, will you be conducting a policy and procedure review related to the response to calls involving mentally unhealthy persons? If so, what would that review entail? And if you don't plan to do such a review, why not? So again, this is on the response to calls front end. So starting with Brian Zupke.
I'm sorry, can you repeat one more time?
Sure. This is on the front end of the law enforcement things. Will you be conducting a policy and procedure review related to the response to calls involving mentally unhealthy persons? If so, what will that review entail? If you don't plan to do such a review, why not? So, and feel free to just comment on what you think the appropriate responses would be.
Well,
mentally
I don't know if I already mentioned this, but we already, almost all of our staff is trained in crisis intervention to be able to handle mental health. We are actively working with, it's called North Lake supplied for a grant. It's called CATCH program. Sorry, something just happened. And basically, it's a group that they have a plan to how to handle with approaching individuals in mental health, and the best way to deal with that on a street level when an officer is on scene. Usually if the client that's through the program, they can they have a safety plan. We can log into that and approach that with the best plan, who we can contact, and we immediately notify the physicians that are dealing with them. And we're actually actively applying for another grant. We're going to have teams show up on scene to help assist at the hospital, because that's a whole different aspect of the time we spend at hospitals and the amount of money that it involves on a county level. And this grant will help us.
Time's up.
And I probably should have given you 90 seconds. So why don't you do another 30 seconds, and then Mr. Boudreau will have 90 seconds.
This current grant will help us. The team will be just professional physicians that are these clients are seeing. They will show up on scene and sit with them and kind of alleviate the time it takes us involved, because it's a very extensive on any time we have mental health calls, and they can transport as well to any institution within the state. And hopefully this grant can be received. I believe it's 7 million over a certain amount of years.
All right. Anthony Boudreau.
As far as policy review, not only that, I mean, there's they run a similar program to us called Lexapol, which is very heavy in the policies. Some are not feasible for our agencies here locally. And as far as reviewing anything, me as if I'm elected the leader of the organization, it would be my responsibility to make sure that I'm aware of and agree with all the policies in there, and that we can be that we are in compliance with it, and to make sure it's continually updated for the best practices. And it sounds like me that Ashland County is already on the right track with all the training and implementing of that training and the response to the need. So
30 seconds.
I would still review the policies just to make sure that everything is right and that we are operating responsibly and in a manner that would have the best possible outcomes.
All right. Okay, then next set question, somewhat related. Do you think the Sheriff's Department is working effectively with county social services entities? Feel free to amplify on any observations you have about that, starting with Anthony Boudreau.
I cannot speak specifically to Ashland County. I think law enforcement as a whole has worked better with human services. We've obviously we understand the need to work with them. Especially with the mental health calls or the vulnerable adults, or even some of the when it gets into things with the children, we need to refer
30 seconds.
expertise and their resources to be able to carry through continued care. We are there generally just to neutralize things and getting them plugged in with DHS and into programs that can be beneficial. I've seen over here it's worked. It's cut down our EDs and has really benefited a lot of folks in Bayfield County by using ours.
Time.
All right, thank you. Brian Zupke.
Well, I want to start off with, as far as Ashland County Social Services, per capita, they're probably one of the highest rates in Wisconsin as far as abuse with of any kind of child sexual vulnerable adults. I mean, I would say, I mean, they need more funding to be staffed. I know when I was a detective, we were always we worked great together, but we're always busy, we're spread thin, and they need more help. But on the same aspect, our relationship is we're actively trying to do monthly meetings. So we're all on the same page and can help each other out because our detectives and their child abuse investigators are very busy.
Great. All right. Okay. Here's a question. What do you think are the biggest issues with regard to the physical condition of the jail? And if you think there are issues, how would you implement addressing them? Starting with Brian Zupke.
We have a new jail lieutenant. She's doing a very good job as far as restructuring. We've implemented new accounting services, maintaining the jail, and we switched everything over to this day and age. It was kind of, many things were a little outdated, and it was all done within a year's time, and it doesn't happen overnight. I know, like we were
30
talking earlier,
seconds.
there's concerns about programs implemented. I think we're going in that direction. It's just a matter of it doesn't happen overnight, and I think I know we're going in the right direction already. That's it.
All right, Anthony Boudreau.
On that question, was it the structure of,
The just biggest issues with the regard to the physical condition of the jail, and if you think there are issues, how would you go about addressing them?
I'm unaware of any physical issues with the jail. A lot of times there's desire to have bigger and better, but with the current financial situation here locally, I do not see it feasible to build a $20 million facility. What we have works, but yes, if there's updating to be done, I mean, we have to continue keeping it up, and it sounds like with the current lieutenant in there,
30 seconds.
things are moving in the right direction, and yeah, I have no further comment on that.
All right. Here's a question specifically for Brian Zupke. What comments do you have about the recent Ashland Daily Press article saying you don't live in Ashland County? Any comments about that?
Absolutely. I had basically responded to that article. I did also put something on my Facebook that was a little more detailed than the conversation that took place. Basically, when a friend of mine was going to run for sheriff, he chose not to. I decided to run because I felt I was the most qualified. 2 years, I lived in Ashland for a long time, bought a house in Bayfield County 4 years ago. During that 2 years ago, I bought a foreclosure home in Mellon, Wisconsin. Given that aspect, I did everything, switched everything over to vote and everything else. It was a renovation home. Been actively working on that. Daily Press showed up at the house when I was there working on it. I'm staying there now. Basically, it's my primary address. Everything was legally switched over. I'm in renovation, doing all the windows, drywall, plumbing.
All right. Anthony Boudreau, if you would, if you're interested in commenting, you have an opportunity here.
So, I look at state statute 5920 sub 1. It states that you have to be an elector within the county to run for county office or be placed on a ballot. If Mr. Zupke's an elector, I have no problems with that. So
That's fine. Okay.
I'd like to rebuttal that, please.
Sure.
Well, couldn't hear. I still can't hear very well, but I think he said 5920. Yeah, that was well read by myself as far as an elector. Basically, 28 days before election, it has to happen. And like I said, I've started that, and I'm confident that I did everything legally. I sought legal advice and done everything I'm supposed to. I own the house. I've never rented it out for the last Since I owned it, paid all my taxes, I still do, and pay on my other house, and there's no law against owning more than one house. Or how many days if I were to leave there and go to the other house. As long as it's my primary address and that's where I stay.
All right. All right, thank you. Here's a more generic question. What goals do you have for the sheriff's department, starting with Anthony Boudreau?
Goals. So like I said before, making sure there's, you know, with the current drug trends we have locally, really getting maximizing the enforcement in that area is paramount. Because that obviously with the drug abuse comes the other crimes that are associated with it. You have the amount of burglaries, thefts, property crimes, and that. So taking a two-step approach to that is dealing with people, offenders, making sure they're held accountable, and then making sure that we get them plugged in with the services they need while they're if they find themselves in the county jail, and then accommodate any programming put in place by the courts.
Time.
You
All
know,
right. Okay, Brian Zupke.
I have several goals, so I'm going to go fast. Repair a relationship with Bad River. Extend a third detective for focus only drugs, and they don't bother him because he will focus only on drugs. I would also like a school resource officer. We have many of our county residents in the Ashland School District, and the Ashland PD's current school officer is great. He's spread thin, and I think we need another one. There's grants for that. I'd like to expand our pre-drug diversion programs so we can intercept maybe people that we can get help without charging them. There's grants for that as well. I'd also like to implement a leasing program for cars, save us a little money on that. K9 unit, like I said, our emergency response team, and look at other things like our database system, our records management. We have many issues, and we like to look at other options. Beyond that,
Time.
All right. Here's a question. Do you believe that community policing models can work in a mostly rural county? Please explain your answer, starting with Brian Zupke.
yes, I believe so. It's about interacting and on getting on a personal level. That's what all policing models means getting out of the car, off the highways. I mean, patrolling every community. Our past sheriff, I know he implemented a program I thought was great, was going to town board meetings. Every deputy had a district. You show up every month and speak to the community members and say, well, what can we do different? How are things going? And just check in once in a while, even beyond that, not just once a month, but interacting with their children or events, every event in town, maybe checking with the Chamber of Commerce. Hey, would you like to see an officer there? I think that's usually good to do because they have all the events scheduled for the year, you know, and 4th of July and everything else. But yes, I think it can work in all the rural areas. It's just a matter of initiating it and go beyond just arrests and traffic and everything else.
All right. Anthony Boudreau.
so yes, in the county, yeah, there are obviously there's restrictions with the, you know, geographically, but we can still, yes, we can get out of the car. If there's a problem in a certain area, there's, you know, forming a group within the community to help solve that issue. There's on the public relations part of the
30
community,
seconds.
building that relationship. You know, Brian had mentioned the SRO. Well, more cost effective would be getting officers in the school, as you know, like with the DARE program, which I'm a big supporter of. And obviously getting in to, yeah, the community events, and you know, getting our deputies in with the community. and being aware of what's going on.
Mhm.
Done.
All right. Next question. What is, okay, have any complaints regarding your performance been formally lodged against you during your career, and what were the outcomes of any such complaints? Starting with Anthony Boudreau.
So any complaints against me?
Yeah, yes, it says formally lodged about your performance. It says,
I have none. I have one letter in my file, which was, I was late to work twice in one weekend. That was about 15 years ago, or well, maybe a little less. Since then, I've slept with 3 alarm clocks. Ask my ex-wife about it. So that's all I have on it.
all right, Brian Zupke.
As far as formal complaints, I can't think of any, but I think any new officer coming out of the academy, they're aggressive, they don't understand maybe the community policing aspect, how to deal with people. And you learn that over the years. And I'd be a liar if I said I'd never had any verbal complaints against me. I learned through the years. I mean, you're not a robot in a uniform. You gotta have to learn how to be person to person. It's not a badge against the person. Yes, we are at a badge. We're held to a higher level, but it's an acquired trait, and
30
you don't
seconds.
get that right away out of the academy. And I think we all go through it and get those complaints. But the best thing is, do we learn from them and become the best we can as a law enforcement officer and represent our agency?
Next question has to do with deputy training. Are there any subjects that you think the deputies need, that you think the training right now is inadequate and you would like to see improved? Starting with Brian Zupke.
Well, that's one thing I think our agency, our current sheriff brought to the table right away is training. He always leaves that door open to better yourself, going back to learning this job and becoming the best law enforcement officer you can be. So we stress that, and we force some trainings. Like I said earlier, crisis intervention training is huge in society right now. I think at some point it'll be mandatory at the
30
police
seconds.
academy level, but it isn't right now. But we're making all new officers go because it's very important to learn that aspect of how to deal with mental health subjects, because it's not just dealing with crime or drugs, whatnot. So that's a we kind of have open door on training because we want the best of all of our officers.
Okay. Do you think the department's deputies and jail personnel are adequately diverse? If not, what plans do you have to increase diversity? Starting with Brian Zupke.
Well, like I mentioned earlier as well, no, we're not adequately diverse. We just started this year with Ashland PD, Chief Bill Hagstrom, doing cultural diversity to get people more, like I said, non-biased. Like I said, I explained earlier, people are sometimes implicit bias. They don't know it. They have the best intentions, but they're not aware of, certain cultures, gender, socioeconomic levels. That has to be understood. We want to continue to keep doing that every year.
30 seconds.
No, I'm sorry, time's up.
No,
No.
30 seconds.
Okay, so we're going to continue to do that and maybe expand it more. Like I said, Dylan Jennings from Bad River had done this great training for us, and we got to continue to do that every year. So new officers, and not just new, just we included deputies, and like I said, I want to expand that to jailers as well, so everybody has the option to go.
All right. And Anthony Boudreau.
Would you like me to start with the training question, the first one? Or,
I'm sorry.
You
the-
missed him for a question.
Yeah, you missed me on the previous question.
Oh, okay. this was, do you think the department's deputies and jail personnel are adequately diverse? If not, what plans do you have to increase diversity in the department?
So as far as when we hire and retain people, it's based on their abilities. I think there's a diverse, they're a diverse agency. They have females that work there. They have males. They have people of different races. I think when we hire, given the limited pool, we just take the best. It doesn't matter what race they are.
30 seconds.
The best.
All right.
So I'm done with that question. Should I go back to the other one, or we'll just keep moving on?
Okay, okay. And I think we'll have this as the last question. Why do you think you are better qualified than your election opponents? And starting with Anthony Boudreau.
I don't necessarily think I'm better than Brian. I'm different. I have a different, set of different personality. So I don't compare anything he's got going on to what I'm doing. So I can't say I'm all around better than him, but I know my abilities and I know what kind of work I can do.
30 seconds.
I believe I would be the best choice to work there because I can bring in a set of experiences from other agencies. I'm not plugged in. I don't have any biases or friendships with people within the agency. So I would be neutral. It'd be like a fresh start for everyone there and really examine things and to maximize them and take them to the next level.
All right, Brian Zupke.
Well, I could say all the specialized trainings I've been to, but I don't think, I've had it almost every trainings, but it's not worth going down that road because I can tell you what I did with the trainings, which I already explained most of this debate. I started off at the bottom and worked my way up slowly throughout my career until I got to second command under sheriff. And I've proven that I've learned all aspects of the job over 24 years. And I continue to learn. There's so much more to learn and expand myself as a would be hopefully the sheriff of Ashland County. And I'll continue to always do that, the offer of the best of myself to everyone in Ashland County. That's all. Thank you.
All right. Well, it's time for the 1-minute closing remarks. And we're going to go in reverse order from the opening statements. So we'll start with Brian Zupke.
The closing remarks, like I said, I think right now, being stigmatized a little bit about this residency issue, so some people are bringing it up. I'm not going to let that bring me down. I've explained already thoroughly. If people want to read further, go on my Brian Zupke for Sheriff page, my explanation, because there was a lot of things that weren't said in the Daily Press article. I don't want to dwell too much on negativity, but like I said, I feel confident in what I've done in my campaign beyond that. My experience speaks for itself in my resume. Like I said, I've worked in Ashland County for I'm the most out of all the candidates. I've been in Ashland County for almost 22 years. So that's it.
All right, Anthony Boudreau.
In closing, again, thank you for having both of us. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. Like Brian, I have my own Facebook page, Bedreau for Sheriff. Check me out for more beyond what we were limited to speaking here about. But I really enjoyed the opportunity. I've actually learned a lot just in the running for sheriff and talking with people in the community and learning about what they
30
want
seconds.
as law enforcement officers. I've learned quite a bit to where I've adapted what I do here, even though I'm seeking an office elsewhere. I stand true by my core values as I stated, which if you look on my Facebook page, you'll see the law enforcement officer code of ethics. I go strongly by them. I operate my work, my career, and my personal life on that. So
All right. Well, thank you. And again, as a reminder to the audience, Alan Lindquist is also on the ballot. And along with the two candidates who heard tonight, Alan Lindquist did provide information to the league to post on our vote411.org website. And so for information about the candidates for sheriff, as well as candidates in other races, be sure to check out our vote411.org. Again, that's very simple. It's vote411.org. The primary, August 9th. The general election will be November 8th. The League of Women Voters, of course, urges you to vote and encourage all your friends and neighbors to do it. We really want to thank the candidates tonight, and we want to thank our Zoom audience for your participation and those of you who sent in such thoughtful questions. And I really want to thank the league crew who arranged the forum behind the scenes and those of you who helped with the forum tonight. So this ends our program. Good night.
Thank you.
thank you.